I never imagined that a single, seemingly small rumor could spiral into a storm capable of changing my life completely. I had always believed that honesty, hard work, and genuine effort were enough to protect me. I went about my days quietly, trusting the people around me, friends, colleagues, even family, believing that trust was something solid, something unshakable. I had no reason to doubt them, no reason to think that anyone would try to pull the rug out from under me. But that belief, so carefully built over years, was about to shatter in a way I couldn't have anticipated. It all began on a Monday morning, the kind of morning that feels ordinary, almost boring. I woke up to the usual alarm, the kind that nudges you gently, but insistently, out of sleep, and reached for my phone before even brushing my teeth. A habit really. Checking notifications, messages, social media. Nothing unusual at first. Just the usual flood of emails, group messages, and social updates. But then I froze. There it was. A screenshot, a message, a post, not just one, but several, each more unsettling than the last. My heart started to race before I even understood why. The messages weren't just misunderstandings. They weren't small exaggerations that could be laughed off. They were deliberate, carefully twisted versions of reality. Whispers of lies that painted me as someone I was not. Dishonest, manipulative, untrustworthy. Someone people needed to be wary of. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe a joke that I didn't understand. Maybe someone had taken a comment I made out of context. But as I scrolled through, reading post after post, message after message, the truth hit me like a punch to the chest. It wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. Someone had gone out of their way to construct a story that wasn't real, and it was spreading. And the most terrifying part, everyone seemed to believe it. For a few moments, I couldn't breathe. The air in the room seemed thicker than usual, pressing down on me, heavy with tension. My mind raced, trying to understand how something so small could feel so devastating. How could a few words, written in the wrong way, twist the perception of people I had trusted for years? How could a moment of careless judgment or a lie taken seriously suddenly undo everything I had built? I felt frozen, helpless, trapped in a strange kind of silence. Then came the first subtle changes. Friends I had laughed with, colleagues I had confided in, even family members whose love I had taken for granted, began to act differently. Subtle glances, sudden withdrawals, small hesitations in conversation. It was as if invisible walls had been erected overnight, walls that separated me from the people I had trusted completely. Each interaction was now a minefield, each word weighed and measured, each gesture scrutinized. I found myself questioning everything, every smile, every friendly comment, every moment of shared trust. Who truly believed the lies? Who would stand by me? And most importantly, who had been part of this before I even realized it? Isolation crept in quietly at first, like a fog rolling over a familiar landscape. It wrapped around me, making familiar spaces feel foreign. I felt alone even in a crowded room. Co-workers avoided my eyes in meetings. Messages in social groups went unanswered. And greetings that once felt warm and casual became stiff, awkward, and hesitant. Even social media, the place where I had shared joy, updates, and small victories, became a minefield of judgment. I felt exposed in a way I hadn't known was possible, vulnerable to the opinions and whispers of everyone around me. And yet, amidst the shock, fear, and hurt, there was a flicker inside me, a stubborn, quiet flame that refused to go out. Deep down, I knew the truth. I knew who I was. I knew my intentions, my honesty, my character. And I knew that if I did nothing, if I allowed the lies to define me, they would become my story. They would become the version of me that the world remembered. They could destroy everything I had worked for, not just my reputation, but my confidence, my relationships, even the life I had painstakingly built, piece by piece. I sat there, staring at my phone, and made a silent, unspoken promise to myself. I wouldn't let this happen. I couldn't let this happen. I had to act, but not out of blind anger, not out of revenge. I had to act strategically, carefully, and with the clarity that only truth can give. I had to reclaim control over the narrative before it consumed me entirely. The calm of that morning was deceptive. Outside, the world carried on as usual. The sun rose, people went to work, traffic flowed. But inside, everything had shifted. I could feel it, like the stillness before a storm. The air felt heavier, charged with tension, anticipation, and an unspoken warning. I knew that the days ahead would be challenging, that the whispers and rumors would grow louder, and that my life would never feel quite the same again. But in that quiet, in that moment of realization, I also felt something else, a sense of resolve, a determination to face what was coming with intelligence, patience, and unwavering focus. The storm hadn't yet hit, but I could see it forming on the horizon, dark clouds gathering, ready to pour down chaos and challenge onto everything I had. And in that moment, though fear and uncertainty loomed, I felt a strange kind of clarity. I knew the road ahead would be hard. I knew that it would test me in ways I had never imagined. But I also knew that I wasn't powerless. I had truth on my side. And sometimes, truth is the strongest weapon of all. I had always believed that people would see the truth. If I simply lived honestly, if I worked hard and treated others with respect, I thought that trust and integrity were shields strong enough to protect me from the chaos of the world. But that illusion was shattered faster than I could have imagined. It started small, barely noticeable, a whisper here, a vague post there. At first, I ignored them, telling myself I was overreacting, that it was just idle chatter, harmless gossip. But small fires have a way of growing when they go unnoticed, and before long, the whispers became louder, spreading to places I couldn't control. I first noticed the subtle changes in my friends. Messages began to arrive, cautious, hesitant, and tinged with doubt. I saw something online. "Is that really true?" they asked. Their words polite but uncertain. Each message stabbed at me, not because they doubted me maliciously, but because they revealed that even people I trusted were questioning me. That doubt, subtle as it was, felt heavier than the rumors themselves. It made me question myself, my relationships, my life. The ground I had always stood on, solid and familiar, suddenly felt shaky and unreliable. Then came the post that shook me to my core. It accused me of sabotaging a co-worker's project to get ahead. A claim so outrageous that at first I couldn't even process it. I stared at the screen, disbelief turning into shock, shock turning into anger, and anger into a sinking sense of helplessness. How could someone make such a claim? How could people read it and simply accept it as truth? It wasn't just a rumor anymore. It was a statement, shared and amplified across social media and within my office group. Comments, questions, assumptions began appearing immediately. People who had worked with me for years, people who knew my character, suddenly seemed to see me through the lens of this false story. When my boss called me into his office, the dread I had been carrying all day became physical. The walk down, the hall felt endless, the familiar office suddenly foreign. Sitting there, facing him, facing people whose opinions I had valued and trusted. Explaining myself felt meaningless. Every screenshot I presented, every clarification I tried to make, seemed to twist further in the telling. The words I had spoken, the actions I had taken, were now evidence against me. I felt trapped in a place where reality had been rewritten, and I had no power to stop it. Leaving the office that day, the world felt heavier, somehow darker. The halls I had once walked with confidence now seemed lined with suspicion. Co-workers' glances lingered longer than necessary. Their greetings felt forced. Conversations felt like tests I couldn't pass. Even my home, the place I had always considered a refuge, felt tainted by the echoes of the day. Every social media notification, every comment, every share, seemed like another reminder that the lie was spreading, that the story someone had invented about me was taking hold faster than I could respond. That night, I sat alone, staring at my phone, scrolling through feeds with a mix of dread and disbelief. Anger, frustration, and fear intertwined into a heavy weight that pressed down on me. Every new post seemed to twist reality further. Every share seemed to solidify the false narrative. And every cautious message from friends and family reminded me that the damage was already done, or at least it felt that way. The first shock wasn't just the accusation. It was the realization that the world could believe in a lie faster than it could accept the truth. But amidst the despair, a moment of clarity emerged. I understood that I had a choice. I could allow this rumor to define me, let it shape the way people saw me, let it erode the trust I had worked so hard to build. Or I could fight, not recklessly, not in anger, not by stooping to lies of my own, but deliberately, strategically, using patience and the undeniable power of truth. Inaction would only let the narrative write itself at my expense. If I wanted to reclaim control, I had to act. I had to be deliberate, calm, and unwavering in pursuit of what was real. I spent hours that night planning, thinking through every angle, considering every piece of evidence I could use to prove the truth. Anger simmered beneath the surface. Yes, but it was tempered by determination. I wasn't going to lash out or attack the person who had started the rumors. That would only escalate the chaos. Instead, I needed to craft a strategy, a plan that would let the truth rise above the lies, slowly, deliberately, until there was no room left for doubt. By the time the night deepened and silence filled the room, I felt a strange combination of exhaustion and resolve. The first shock had hit me, shaken me to my core, and left me feeling vulnerable and alone. But it had also revealed a path forward. I realized that the rumors could be fought, that the lies could be countered, that my story could be reclaimed. And in that realization, I found a small, steady flame of hope. The first shock had been painful, humiliating, and frightening, but it had also sparked the fire I would need to face the storm ahead, to reclaim my life, my reputation, and the truth that belonged to me. I stayed up long after midnight, staring at the glow of my laptop screen. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the fan, but inside my head it was chaos. My thoughts raced between anger and heartbreak, disbelief and cold determination. I replayed everything that had happened. The looks at work, the messages from friends, the viral post that turned my name into a joke. Every moment felt like a wound that refused to close. But somewhere in the middle of that storm of emotions, a quiet thought began to take shape. If the rumor could spread like wildfire, then maybe the truth could too. Not through anger, not through shouting or begging people to believe me, but through strategy, through something smart, calm, and deliberate. That idea was like a small light in the darkness. I didn't want revenge just for the sake of it. I wanted justice. I wanted the truth to stand on its own, undeniable and clear. But to do that, I needed to be careful. I couldn't just post a defensive message saying, "This isn't true." No one listens to that. People scroll past, assume you're covering for yourself, and move on. I needed something stronger, something that would stop them from scrolling, make them read, and most importantly, make them think. So, I began the only way I knew how, by gathering proof. I opened old emails, scrolled through endless chat logs, and searched for every scrap of evidence that could support my side. Screenshots, messages, timestamps. I collected everything. I didn't care how small or insignificant it seemed. Each detail mattered. Every message was a puzzle piece, and I was determined to fit them together until the whole picture became clear. My eyes burned from the screen light, but I couldn't stop. The more I dug, the more determined I became. There were moments when I stopped, just staring at my reflection in the dark window, wondering how things had gotten to this point. How could one rumor undo years of trust, friendships, and hard work? How could people who had known me for so long believe a lie so easily? That question haunted me, but it also fueled me. I realized I couldn't control what people thought, but I could control what they saw next. The next step was reaching out to people I knew had seen the truth. I sent messages to a few colleagues, ones who were there when the situation had actually happened, before it got twisted into a false narrative. Some hesitated. They didn't want to be dragged into the mess, but a few of them responded with kindness and honesty. They remembered the truth and were willing to stand by it. Their words gave me something I hadn't felt in days: hope. I wasn't completely alone. There were still people who saw through the lies, who believed in me, and that gave me the strength to keep going. Piece by piece, the real story began to emerge. I could see the timeline forming in front of me. The moment it began, how it spread, who pushed it further, and finally who started it. The person behind it all wasn't as careful as they thought. They had left clues everywhere, screenshots that didn't line up, inconsistencies in their words. Even people they had confided in who didn't realize they were repeating their lies. It was all there, waiting to be exposed. And as I put it together, I felt something shift inside me. The fear that had held me hostage started to fade, replaced by a sharp, steady confidence. I could fight this. I could take back control. But I also knew that how I presented the truth would matter just as much as the truth itself. If I came across as angry or desperate, it would feed their narrative. I had to be calm, factual, composed. The truth didn't need to shout. It only needed to be clear. So, I began crafting my comeback like a story. Not just a random post online, but a sequence. Each piece leading into the next, carefully designed to draw people in. I wanted them to feel the progression, to see how the rumor had been built from lies, and how the truth had been ignored. I wanted them to see it for themselves, not because I told them to, but because the evidence left them no other choice. Every night, I refined my plan. I read and rewrote the posts until the tone was perfect, firm, calm, unshakable. I removed anything emotional or defensive and replaced it with clarity and proof. When I finally stepped back and looked at what I had prepared, it felt powerful, not loud or vengeful, but powerful in its simplicity. Facts don't need drama. They just need to be seen. Still, I couldn't deny the fear that lingered beneath my determination. What if it didn't work? What if people had already made up their minds? What if no amount of truth could erase the stain of a lie? Those thoughts haunted me, but I refused to let them win. I told myself that even if I couldn't change everyone's opinion, I could at least reclaim my peace. I could show the truth for my own sake. That alone would be worth it. By dawn, my plan was complete. My eyes were tired. My body felt heavy, but my mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. I looked around the quiet room, the scattered notes, the folders on my screen, the timeline of proof, and I felt something I hadn't felt since the rumors began. Control. For the first time, the chaos around me didn't feel unbeatable. I wasn't helpless anymore. I had a story. I had evidence, and I had the strength to face whatever came next. As the first light of morning touched the window, I whispered to myself, "This isn't over." And I meant it. I wasn't just fighting to clear my name anymore. I was fighting to remind myself who I was, to rebuild the confidence that lies had tried to destroy. The person who had started this thought they could break me. But what they didn't realize was that they had only awakened the part of me that refused to be defeated. My comeback wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be precise, powerful, and undeniable. The truth was coming, and this time, it would go viral for all the right reasons. When I finally uncovered the truth, it didn't come with a loud confrontation or a dramatic moment. It came quietly, through pieces of information that fit together like shards of broken glass. Each message, each screenshot, each whispered confession revealed a small part of a much darker picture. The person behind the rumors wasn't some random troublemaker or jealous colleague. It was someone I had once trusted completely, someone who had been close to me, who had known my insecurities, my dreams, and even my weaknesses. Discovering that truth felt like being punched in the chest. The air left my lungs, and for a long while, I just sat there staring at the evidence, trying to make sense of it all. I remembered how we had laughed together, how we had confided in each other when things got tough at work. There was a time when I would have defended them against anyone who spoke badly about them. I would have sworn they had my back no matter what. And yet, here I was, staring at the digital fingerprints of their betrayal. Posts they had written, messages they had sent, all dripping with venom disguised as concern. It was as if I didn't even know the person I had trusted so deeply. The worst part wasn't just that they had lied. It was how easily they had done it. Their words were carefully crafted to sound believable, subtle enough to make people question me without outright accusing me. They didn't come off as the villain. They positioned themselves as a victim, hurt by something I had supposedly done. They had twisted small, harmless moments and reshaped them into evidence of deceit and manipulation. Reading those words made my skin crawl. It was chilling how effortlessly they had turned truth into poison. I spent hours replaying our past conversations in my head, searching for clues, for moments when I might have seen this coming. There were signs, I realized, small red flags I had ignored. The times they asked too many questions about my work, or when they would casually mention things I had told them in confidence, as if testing how much they could reveal before I noticed. I had brushed those things off, assuming they were just careless or forgetful. But now, every little moment carried a darker meaning. The betrayal cut deeper, because it wasn't driven by some big fight or misunderstanding. It was driven by jealousy. Somewhere along the line, my small successes had started to bother them. Maybe it was the recognition I got at work, or the friendships I built with others. Whatever it was, they had let envy turn into bitterness, and bitterness into a plan to tear me down. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. People rarely betray out of hatred. Most of the time, it's out of envy, masked as friendship. For days, I carried that pain around like a weight. Every time I walked into the office, I could feel eyes on me. I didn't know who had believed the rumors, and who hadn't. It felt like everyone was silently judging, quietly choosing sides. And the person responsible? They acted like nothing had happened. They smiled at me, made small talk, even asked if I was doing okay. That fake concern made my blood boil. I wanted to scream at them, to tell everyone the truth, to expose every lie they had ever told. But I knew if I lost control, they would win again. They would twist that moment too, make me look unstable, emotional, irrational. So I stayed calm. I smiled back. I watched them closely. There's a kind of power in knowing the truth when the other person thinks you're still in the dark. Every fake word they spoke, every fake smile they gave, it all revealed more about who they truly were. I started documenting everything, saving new messages, watching their behavior. I didn't want revenge in the form of chaos. I wanted precision. I wanted the truth to come out so clearly, that even they couldn't deny it. Late one night, I sat alone with all the evidence spread across my desk. It was strange how something so painful could also bring clarity. For the first time, I saw them for who they really were. Not the friend I thought I had, but a person so consumed by envy that they were willing to destroy someone who had only ever helped them. The sadness in that realization was overwhelming. I felt like I was grieving, not for them, but for the friendship that never truly existed. I thought about confronting them directly, telling them everything I knew, but I stopped myself. Confrontation would only feed their narrative. They would deny, twist, and play innocent. No, this had to unfold naturally. The truth had to speak louder than their lies. I began sharing parts of my story, calmly with people who mattered, the ones whose opinions could turn the tide. I didn't name names. I didn't accuse. I simply presented facts, letting the timeline of events reveal what really happened. And slowly, things began to shift. People who had once avoided me started to talk again. Some apologized quietly. Others just looked guilty. The same whispers that once spread, lies now began to carry the truth. It was subtle, almost poetic. The same weapon they used to destroy me was now undoing them. I didn't celebrate it. There was no satisfaction in watching someone fall, even if they deserved it. The only feeling that lingered was a deep, tired relief. Still, I couldn't shake the pain of that betrayal. It changed the way I looked at people. I became more careful, more guarded. I stopped believing that kindness guaranteed loyalty. Because it doesn't. Some people only stay close to you until your light starts shining brighter than theirs. Then they try to dim it, not realizing that darkness never wins in the end. But I wasn't broken anymore. Hurt, yes. Changed, definitely. But not broken. I had learned that betrayal doesn't define who you are. It reveals who they are. And as I watched the truth finally make its way through the noise, I realized something simple, yet powerful. I didn't need revenge to win. The truth was enough. It always is. I spent the next few nights sitting in front of my laptop, the glow of the screen reflecting off my tired eyes. My mind raced with plans and possibilities, every thought sharpening into purpose. The lies had spread fast, but the truth, if delivered right, could spread faster. I knew I couldn't fight rumors with rage or impulsive posts. That would only make me look defensive and unstable. No, if I wanted to win this war, I had to be smarter. I had to build something undeniable, something so precise, so calm, that it couldn't be twisted. I started by mapping everything out like a strategy board. I wrote down the timeline of how it all began, tracing each lie back to its source. Every false post, every manipulated screenshot, every whispered story, they all connected to the same place. But instead of exposing the culprit directly, I focused on clarity. People didn't need another drama. They needed the truth presented like a mirror, quiet, reflective, and impossible to argue with. I reminded myself that facts carry more power when delivered with composure. The first post was the hardest. I rewrote it at least 10 times before pressing publish. My hands shook as I hit the button, but I knew it had to start somewhere. The post wasn't about defending myself. It was about telling the story from the beginning, showing the real sequence of events that had been twisted out of context. I included screenshots that showed conversations in full, not just the cropped versions that had circulated before. Every sentence was deliberate, every word chosen to sound calm but firm. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't name names. I just told the truth. At first there was silence. No one liked, no one commented. But within an hour, notifications started popping up. A few people shared the post, writing things like, "There's always more to the story." That was exactly what I wanted. To plant doubt in the minds of those who had believed the lies. I didn't need everyone to take my side. I just needed them to start questioning what they'd heard. Doubt was powerful. It cracked the walls that lies had built. Over the next few days, I posted again, one piece at a time. Each post revealed another layer of the truth. Emails, messages, evidence that aligned perfectly with what I had said before. I kept my tone consistent, composed, articulate, focused. I knew that the moment I sounded angry, people would tune out. So I made the truth engaging, almost cinematic, like a mystery unfolding in real time. I used captions that created curiosity. Here's what they didn't show you. Or, the story they told you left out one key detail. Every post was a new chapter. And soon, people began waiting for the next one. It amazed me how quickly things began to turn. The same people who had doubted me were now commenting words of support. Some apologized privately, admitting they had believed the rumors, but now realized they'd been wrong. Others messaged me, thanking me for being brave enough to stand up for myself publicly. Their words didn't erase the pain, but they made me feel seen again. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the villain in someone else's narrative. I was finally taking back control of my own. I used storytelling to my advantage. Instead of bombarding people with data and evidence, I told them how it felt. The confusion, the isolation, the heartbreak of being betrayed by someone I trusted. I made the story human. I didn't just prove the facts. I made people feel them. That's when everything changed. People didn't just read my posts, they shared them. My words began spreading beyond my immediate circle. Strangers reached out to say they related to my experience, that they too had been victims of lies or manipulation. What started as a personal fight for my reputation was becoming something larger, a voice for anyone who'd been wrongfully judged. But I was careful not to let it become a witch hunt. I never mentioned the person behind it all. I didn't have to. The truth had a way of pointing in the right direction without me saying a word. Those who were paying attention connected the dots on their own. The more I stayed calm and focused, the more it exposed the contrast between me and the one who had betrayed me. They had used chaos. I was using clarity. They had used deceit. I was using patience. And in that difference, people began to see who was genuine. There was a quiet power in staying composed while the truth did the talking. I didn't argue in the comments, didn't post emotional responses to criticism. I learned that silence, when paired with evidence, was stronger than any defensive rant. Slowly, the person who had started it all began losing their grip. Their credibility faded as more people began questioning their intentions. I could sense the shift. Messages they sent to others were now met with doubt, their words carrying less weight than before. The same network they had used to destroy me was now turning against them. Then came the post that changed everything. It wasn't about evidence this time. It was about reflection. I wrote about how quickly people believe what they see online, how rumors can destroy someone's life before the truth even has a chance to speak. It was raw, emotional, and painfully real. Sometimes, I wrote, you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand firm and let the truth echo on its own. That line struck a chord. The post went viral overnight. I watched as the numbers climbed. Hundreds of shares, thousands of reactions. But more than that, it started conversations. People began discussing accountability, honesty, and empathy. The truth had finally gone beyond my story. That night, I sat back in my chair, scrolling through the comments, feeling something I hadn't felt in months, peace. Not because I had won, but because I had done it without losing myself. I hadn't needed lies or anger to fight back. I had simply used what I always had on my side, the truth. And in a world where rumors spread faster than facts, that was a victory all its own. For the first time, I felt the weight lift off my chest. The damage had been done, yes, but I had built something stronger in its place. My resilience. The Truth campaign had worked, not because it destroyed anyone, but because it rebuilt me. And as I turned off my screen that night, I realized something quietly powerful. Lies fade, but truth endures. When the truth finally began to spread, it didn't start with noise. It started with silence, a silence that came right before everything exploded. I remember sitting in front of my screen that night, reading the final draft of my post, over and over, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and anticipation. I had rewritten it a dozen times, searching for the right balance between emotion and evidence. It wasn't just a post, it was a lifeline, my last chance to clear my name and show the world who I really was. Every word had to matter. Every sentence had to strike the perfect chord between calm honesty and undeniable truth. I hesitated before hitting publish. My finger hovered over the button as 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind. What if people ignored it? What if no one cared? What if it only made things worse? But then I remembered the humiliation, the sleepless nights, the way people had looked at me with quiet judgment. That memory gave me courage. I pressed post. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The screen stayed still. No new notifications, no reactions. I almost regretted it, thinking maybe I had been foolish to believe people would listen. Then one like appeared, then another, then a comment. I knew something wasn't right about those rumors. Then another, finally the truth. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing non-stop. The quiet had turned into chaos. But this time, it wasn't against me. The post was spreading, faster than anything I had ever seen. People were tagging their friends, sharing screenshots, and commenting words that finally sounded like justice. The very platform that once destroyed my reputation was now carrying my truth across timelines and screens. It felt unreal. For weeks I had lived under a shadow, but now the light was breaking through. The shares kept increasing, hundreds, then thousands. Strangers were leaving messages of support, saying things like, "This is powerful, and I wish I had your strength." Some even admitted they had believed the lies, but now saw how manipulated the story had been. The irony hit hard. The same crowd that once turned away was now turning around. As the post gained momentum, messages started coming in from people I hadn't heard from in months. Old friends, colleagues, even distant relatives. They all wanted to talk. Many apologized. They said they were sorry for believing what they had heard. Sorry for their silence. Some admitted they hadn't wanted to get involved when the rumors were spreading, afraid of becoming targets themselves. I read their words slowly, my chest tightening with a strange mix of relief and resentment. Forgiveness didn't come easily, not after everything I had been through. But I also knew that this moment wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about truth, doing what it was meant to do, cut through the fog. So I stayed calm, responding only when necessary, thanking people who supported me, and keeping my tone steady. I didn't want to seem like I was celebrating. The truth didn't need fireworks. It needed dignity. I remember scrolling through the comments late into the night. Each one felt like a piece of myself being put back together. This makes so much sense now. I can't believe people actually thought you'd do something like that. You handled this with so much grace. I read those lines over and over, not because I needed validation, but because for the first time in a long time, people were seeing me for who I really was, not the version painted by lies. As my post spread, others started speaking up too. A few co-workers who had stayed silent before now stepped forward, confirming parts of my story. One of them even posted, "I should have said this sooner, but I know what really happened. And it's not what people think." Seeing that felt like another crack in the wall that had once boxed me in. The truth wasn't just my voice anymore. It had become a ripple effect, spreading through others who had once been afraid to talk. But the most powerful moment came when I saw a message from someone unexpected, the person who had started it all. No apology, no explanation, just a short message. I didn't think it would go this far. I stared at it for a long time. My hands trembled. Not from anger, but from something deeper. A strange, cold clarity. They had tried to destroy me with lies, and now they were watching the truth undo everything they had built. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence says more than any words ever could. By morning, the post had gone viral. My inbox was overflowing. Journalists wanted to talk. Bloggers wanted to feature my story. People were calling it inspiring, brave, even a digital comeback. But in reality, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like balance finally restored. I wasn't proud, not in the way people expected. I was just relieved. The weight that had been pressing down on me for months was finally lifting, piece by piece. I stepped away from my phone for a while and just sat there, staring out the window. The city outside was waking up, the sky slowly turning gold. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that settles in your chest and stays. The truth had finally spoken, louder than the rumors ever could. As the day went on, I thought about how fragile reputations are, how one lie can destroy years of trust, and how one moment of courage can rebuild it again. I realized the truth doesn't always need to shout. It just needs time and conviction. The lies had their moment, but now, so did I. That night, when I checked my notifications again, I saw the number of shares, tens of thousands. My post had reached people across countries, across languages. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just whispered to myself, "It's over." Not because the world had finally seen me, but because I had finally seen myself again. The truth had gone viral, but what mattered most was that I had survived long enough to watch it happen. I had imagined this moment so many times. The moment when I would finally come face to face with the person who had turned my life into chaos. But when it finally arrived, it didn't feel like a dramatic confrontation. It wasn't cinematic or loud. It was quiet, too quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat as I stood there, facing the person who had started it all. Someone I had once called a friend, someone whose trust I had believed in. It was strange to look at them now, knowing what they had done, knowing the damage their lies had caused. They looked almost the same, calm, composed, pretending nothing had happened. That false confidence they wore like armor used to fool me. Not anymore. This time I could see through it. Their eyes shifted when they met mine, just for a second, and that was enough. They knew, I knew, there was no point pretending anymore. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence hang there between us, thick with everything left unsaid. I could see the faint twitch in their jaw, the flicker of unease that betrayed the calm mask they were trying so hard to maintain. I wanted to start with anger, to shout, to demand an explanation, but I didn't. I'd spent too much energy being angry already. Now I wanted control. I wanted them to see what calm truth looked like when it finally stood in front of their chaos. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. "You know why I'm here," I said. "You know what you did." They tried to smile, tried to dismiss it with a shrug, but I didn't let them. I took out my phone and opened the folder where I'd kept everything. The messages, the posts, the screenshots, the timeline of lies they had carefully woven. I placed it all in front of them. Evidence, undeniable. Every word, every rumor, every false claim traced back to them. I watched as their expression changed. The arrogance started to fade. Their mouth opened, ready to argue, but the words wouldn't come. I spoke again, calm, direct, unshaken. "You took something from me," I said. "My reputation, my peace, my trust in people. And you did it for what? Attention, jealousy, entertainment." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The truth was louder than any anger could ever be. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then came the excuses. It wasn't supposed to go that far. People misunderstood. It was just a joke. The same tired lines people always use when they realize they've gone too far. I let them talk, let them dig the hole deeper. Then I stopped them with a single sentence. You didn't just ruin a moment. You ruined people's trust in me. And that doesn't come back easily. Their eyes dropped. The confidence that once held them upright seemed to crumble piece by piece. I could see guilt creeping in, heavy and undeniable. They stammered something about being sorry, about not realizing the consequences. But I didn't need an apology. Words couldn't undo the damage. What I wanted was accountability. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I wanted them to understand. The silence that followed was thick, uncomfortable. I could almost hear their breathing quicken. That's when I realized something. They weren't evil. They were weak, and their weakness had cost me months of pain. It was almost pathetic, really. The power they had once held over me was gone. They weren't this all-powerful manipulator anymore. They were just a person, small, scared, exposed. When I spoke again, I chose my words carefully. You don't get to decide when this ends, I said softly. The truth already did that for you. Their eyes flicked up, and for the first time, I saw fear there. Not fear of me, but fear of the truth. Fear of being seen for what they really were. They didn't try to argue anymore. They just sat there, silent, defeated, the realization finally sinking in that they couldn't control the story any longer. I stood up to leave, and as I did, I looked at them one last time. Part of me wanted to say something cruel, something that would sting the way their lies had stung me. But I didn't. I wasn't that person anymore. I had fought my battle, and I had won it, not with hate, but with truth. So instead, I said something simple. You taught me something, I told them. You taught me that not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. But you also taught me how strong I can be when I'm pushed to my breaking point. Their lips parted like they wanted to respond, but no sound came out. I turned and walked away, feeling lighter with every step. No shouting, no revenge, just finality. The chapter was closing, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't looking back. As I stepped outside, the sun hit my face, warm and steady. I hadn't realized how tense my body had been until that moment. The confrontation hadn't given me satisfaction. It had given me peace, true peace, because I hadn't needed to destroy them or prove myself through anger. The truth had already done what it needed to do. It had exposed them, revealed everything hidden, and left them standing in the wreckage they had created. That night, I sat alone and thought about what had happened. The image of their face, when they realized the truth, would stay with me forever. Not because it made me happy, but because it reminded me of the power of integrity. Lies crumble, truth endures. I didn't win through revenge or exposure or humiliation. I won by refusing to become like them. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I hoped that the encounter would change them too. That they'd think twice before spreading another lie, before tearing down another person for sport. But whether it did or not didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I had faced them, unshaken and honest. The truth had stood taller than the rumor ever could. For the first time, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The storm was over, and all that remained was calm. The kind that only comes when you've faced the person who tried to break you and realized they were never strong enough to do it. When the chaos finally settled, it felt like stepping out of a storm into eerie stillness. The air was clear, but the silence was heavy. For the first time in months, my phone wasn't buzzing with notifications. My name wasn't being dragged across conversations, and my mind wasn't running wild with anxiety. Everything had quieted, but inside, I was still catching my breath. It's strange how peace can feel unfamiliar when you've been fighting for too long. The truth was finally out. People knew what really happened. The rumors had died, the lies had collapsed under their own weight, and I had my name back. But what they didn't see was the exhaustion behind the victory. They saw calm, but not the nights I had spent second-guessing every word I said, every person I trusted. The truth had set me free, yes, but freedom didn't erase the scars. It just gave me space to heal. I started to look at people differently. Before all this, I believed that honesty and loyalty were natural, that if you were kind and genuine, others would be too. But now I knew better. I learned that sometimes the same people who smile with you during the good days are the ones who turn silent when things get rough. And yet, that realization didn't make me bitter. It made me wiser. Healing wasn't instant. It was slow, almost invisible. Some mornings, I'd wake up feeling strong, ready to take on the world again. Other days, I'd scroll through old messages and feel that sting of betrayal all over again. I didn't try to rush it. Pain demands to be felt before it can fade, and I allowed myself that space. Instead of hiding from the hurt, I faced it, because I knew if I didn't, it would follow me forever. People started to come back into my life. Those who had kept their distance during the chaos reached out again, sending apologetic messages or pretending they had always believed in me. I didn't hold grudges, but I didn't forget either. Trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild overnight. It grows back slowly, cautiously, like grass after a fire. And I let it. I didn't want to live in bitterness. I wanted peace, not the fragile kind that depends on others' opinions, but the solid kind that comes from within. In those quiet weeks, I began to rediscover myself. I took long walks without my phone. I journaled, not for anyone else to read, but just to hear my own thoughts clearly again. I realized how much energy I had spent defending myself, how much power I had given to people who didn't deserve it. So I began pulling that power back. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped reacting to every whisper or speculation. The truth was already out there. It didn't need me to keep proving it. Work slowly became bearable again. The same colleagues who once avoided eye contact now greeted me with cautious smiles. Some offered genuine apologies. Others stayed quiet, maybe out of guilt. I accepted it all with calm indifference. I didn't need their validation anymore. I was done trying to convince anyone of my worth. My focus shifted from what people thought about me to what I thought about myself, and that changed everything. There was a moment, a few weeks after everything ended, when I realized how far I'd come. I was having coffee alone, scrolling through my feed, and I stumbled upon one of my old posts, the one that had gone viral, the one that had cleared my name. I read through the comments again, not with pain or pride, but with perspective. The chaos that once felt like the end of my world now looked like the beginning of a new one. I saw strength where I once saw struggle. It struck me then that truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs time. Lies burn bright and fast, but they can't last. The truth, though quiet, endures. It waits, and when it finally surfaces, it doesn't need to fight. It simply stands, undeniable. That realization gave me a kind of peace I'd never known before. I began speaking differently too, more measured, more intentional. I learned that words could be tools of healing, just as easily as they could be weapons of destruction. I started choosing mine carefully, not to sound wise or careful, but because I knew what careless speech could cause. The same social platforms that once fueled rumors became spaces where I shared lessons about resilience, integrity, and calm. It wasn't revenge. It was redemption. The person who betrayed me faded from my life completely. I stopped checking their profile, stopped wondering what they were saying or doing. They became irrelevant. Their power over me had ended the day I decided not to hate them. Because hate keeps you connected to what hurt you, and I refused to stay tied to that chapter any longer. In time, I noticed something remarkable. My story began to inspire others. People messaged me privately, telling me how they had faced similar betrayals, how they were afraid to fight back, and how my journey gave them courage. It humbled me. What had once been my lowest point had become someone else's guidepost. Pain, when transformed, has that power. It teaches not just you, but those who watch you rise from it. Looking back, I wouldn't say I'm thankful for what happened. Betrayal isn't something you ever feel grateful for, but I am thankful for what it taught me. It stripped away illusions and showed me what truly matters: character, patience, and the quiet power of truth. It taught me to stand firm, even when the ground shakes, and to never underestimate the strength that comes from staying composed in chaos. Now, life feels calmer. The same world that once seemed cruel feels manageable, almost gentle in its predictability. I still get moments of doubt, flashes of old pain, but they pass quickly now. They no longer define me. I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without breaking. And so, I live lighter now. I trust fewer people, but I trust myself completely. I don't chase acceptance anymore, because I've learned that peace is louder than validation. Truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way, and when it does, it heals more deeply than revenge ever could. When everything finally settled, and the noise faded into silence, I was left alone with my thoughts, just me, and the truth that had survived everything meant to destroy it. I often replayed those days in my mind, wondering how something as small as a rumor could have shaken my world so violently, and yet, how that same chaos had led me here, to clarity, to peace, to a kind of strength I never knew I had. The experience had been painful, humiliating, and exhausting, but it taught me a truth so profound that it reshaped the way I looked at life, people, and even myself. The lesson was simple, but its meaning ran deep. Truth and integrity are not fragile. They may bend under pressure, they may get buried under lies, but they do not break. Lies, on the other hand, are loud. They crave attention. They burn bright and fast, but they never last. Truth doesn't rush to defend itself. It simply waits, and when it rises, it doesn't need to fight. It simply stands, undeniable. That's what I learned. That's what carried me through the darkest days, when the whispers felt louder than my own voice. I used to think revenge meant getting even, making the one who hurt you feel the pain you felt. But I understand now that real revenge isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. It's about proving to yourself that their lies cannot define you. My revenge wasn't in shaming the person who betrayed me. It was in showing that no matter what they said, I could still rise, still live, still be me, unbroken, unashamed, and stronger than before. That was the justice I needed. That was the closure I craved. And I learned something else too. People's opinions are temporary, but your character is forever. The same crowd that believes a lie today will applaud your truth tomorrow, but neither reaction should determine your worth. During the chaos, I realized how quickly people switch sides, how loyalty bends when it's tested. But instead of growing bitter, I learned to be selective. Not everyone deserves access to your peace. Not everyone deserves your energy. Sometimes, walking alone is better than standing in a crowd that doesn't know your truth. What surprised me most was how the truth began to heal me. Not instantly, but gradually, like sunlight touching a wound. The more I embraced honesty, the lighter I felt. I no longer needed to explain myself to anyone. I didn't crave validation or sympathy. The truth had already spoken for me. It didn't need my defense anymore. And in that realization, I found peace deeper than any apology could give me. Still, it wasn't easy. There were nights when I'd lie awake, wondering why it had to happen to me, why someone I trusted could betray me so deeply. But now I see that sometimes pain is life's way of forcing growth. If that betrayal hadn't happened, I might have kept living blind to people's true colors, blind to my own resilience. The storm had purpose. It stripped away everything false and left behind only what was real. I began to live differently after that. I started choosing my words more carefully, understanding that language carries weight, that what we say can either heal or harm. I refused to become like those who had hurt me. Instead, I used my voice to tell my story, to remind others that truth is never powerless. And to my surprise, people listened. My story, born from pain, began inspiring others who were facing their own battles with lies, rumors, and betrayal. They told me that my calm gave them courage, that my composure made them believe in second chances. That meant more to me than any apology or validation ever could. Revenge through truth. It sounds poetic, but it's real. When handled wisely, truth is the most powerful weapon you can wield. It doesn't just expose lies. It transforms you. It makes you fearless. Because once you've been through the worst, you stop fearing what people say. Their words lose power when you stand firm in your own. I no longer flinch when someone whispers behind my back. I've seen what truth can do, and I know now that it doesn't need to be defended. It just needs to be lived. Sometimes I think about the person who started it all. I wonder if they ever felt guilt, if they ever realized how far their lies went, how much damage they caused. But then I stop myself. It doesn't matter anymore. Their story no longer concerns me. Their actions only revealed their own emptiness, not mine. I don't need revenge, because I already won the moment I refused to let their lies define who I was. That's the quiet power of truth. It frees you from needing closure from anyone else. Now, whenever I hear gossip about someone, I pause. I don't react. I remember how it felt to be on the other side, to be the one judged without a voice. The experience made me softer in some ways, wiser in others. I don't believe everything I hear anymore. I look for the truth beneath the noise, because I know firsthand that rumors may sound convincing, but they're built on shadows. Truth, though quieter, always shines through. I used to think the world was cruel for letting lies spread so easily, but now I see it differently. The world simply reflects people's choices, what they share, what they believe, what they stand for. And I've chosen to stand for truth, even when it costs me, because peace built on lies is temporary, but peace built on truth is permanent. Looking back, I wouldn't say I'm grateful for what happened, but I'm grateful for what it taught me. It showed me the strength of silence, the weight of words, and the beauty of resilience. It reminded me that integrity isn't just about telling the truth, it's about living it, especially when it's hard. So if I had to sum up everything in one lesson, it would be this: never underestimate the power of truth. Lies can spread fast, but truth endures. And when you hold on to your integrity, when you refuse to let lies define you, you become untouchable. That's not just survival, it's victory.